about a subject that some of you may find difficult, and it's a discussion related to the Bjork Rune and an aspect of the Bjork Rune, which is that feminine energy that also embodies a lot of sexual energy. Now, male or female, you have to deal with this energy. We deal with both male and female energy because, well, let's use this example and I'll tell you why. This figure the brush itself represents sexual energy, and there are two extremes, female and male. These are absolutes. We all abide in between. We all, male or female, have to deal with, as part of our psyche, both male and female energy. And you notice, I'm just noticing this brush is a real good sort of example. On the one side, this little brush looks like a bush, and the rounded edge of this looks like the head of a weenie. So, you know, for male and female, isn't it funny, a paintbrush? We have a little fun there. Normal sexual energy, you know. Carl Jung picked up on this when he came up with the concept of the anima and animus. In men, it's the anima. It's a female-male personality built into the psyche. In women, it's the animus. It's a male mirror personality built into the psyche. So we got aspects of both within ourselves. That's just the human psyche. This is science. And when this energy flows and we're dealing with it properly, we're doing well. We're healthy. We're okay. Our personalities, you know, are pretty much in balance, as balanced as you can get around here. But when that energy is suppressed or denied, refused, or misdirected, then it blows up. Now, the one extreme of misused energy manifests as the person who's just what we call a sex fiend. That's his or her reason for living. And, you know, extremes there. I guess today they call it sexual addiction. In the old days, we used to call it nymphos or whore masters or such. But that's an extreme manifestation that we're not going to be talking about today. That's a very different thing. What I want to talk about is when it's frustrated and results in a frustration in the personality from that. So back in the 1970s, I guess it was, yeah, it'd be about 75, I used to go into a little place to have coffee in the morning. We used to actually shape up there, the job I was working. We'd meet around 8 or so, and by 8:30 we'd be out to the first call of the day. And it was in the neighborhood. It was my neighborhood. I was working with neighborhood people. We all knew each other. So it was nice to sit down, have a cup of coffee before work, talk with some of the neighbors. I knew mostly everyone there, maybe one or two people I didn't really know too well. The waitress wasn't from the neighborhood. And there was a woman who come in who we didn't really know. And I used to call her Lois Lane because she used to dress in that like 1930s, 1940s style, but not a very colorful and attractive. She would dress very bland, very covered up, so that you wouldn't see, you know, she just an unattractive style. Her face only seemed to have one expression, and the only person she would talk to in the place would be the waitress. And I didn't pay her much mind. She was kind of in the background until one day one of the guys says, "Don't even say hello to that one." I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "One of the guys had said good morning to her one day and she went off on him." And really just like he was the worst person in the world, you know, embarrassed him and everyone else was embarrassed for him. And then the next day she comes back like nothing happened. And I know I seen her on the bus a couple of times too, and she would just stand there just, you know, almost like a mannequin. But what I come to realize later, it was a case of that sexually frustrated type of person who doesn't want contact with people in the world, just, you know, especially with men, who regards all men as predators, horny old men. All we want is sex. And that's what one of the things about these repressives is that they act it out openly, but often behind closed doors, they'll be the ones saying all men want is this, men are that, And even if a woman tells her, well, what about him? He's a nice guy. He doesn't mean anything. Oh, no, he's just like the rest of them, they'll say. They're very put off by anything that arouses a feeling in them. And this is what it is. They're revulsed by their own feminine, female sexual energy, and how they handle it is to blame whatever causes them to feel it. Blame the men. Blame the men. Well, the men have nothing to do with it. The men, they're just being nice and saying hello. Whenever we have an interaction between male and female, the energies are there. There's always a slight hinge of that sexual energy. We just can't shut it off in a normal person. But these people overreact. They dress in styles you might consider dowdy, unattractive hairstyles. Well, a lot of women don't wear makeup, but if you have any doubt with these people, see if they're wearing makeup. They don't, unless they do like an old-fashioned style of makeup, like the old, what we used to call the old Irish cake face, with all that stuff on them. But these people are really not trying to be attractive. They're often very scrupulous. They're the kind of people who won't even use profanity. They're offended by anything that might be sin, and these are manifestations of the disease. Where you see a lot of it in one place is with Roman Catholic nuns. Many of them are examples of this. The fact that how they were abusive to children in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in the schools. That's just an outworking of this, overreacting to a little bit of provocation. Kids are kids, and you can't expect kids to be perfect. Well, these people do. And they react when that doesn't happen. How you see how they reacted when the girls got to the age when they were supposed to be dating. And especially they would give the girls a hard time just for even the slightest show of an interest in boys. These are not healthy people. And yet the religion extols their behavior as virtuous is actually extolling a pathology of female sexual frustration. Okay, so now you know about that. The feeling is a grayish yellow feeling if it had a color, very stagnant, a very stale feeling. And it's not a pleasant vibe to be around. Now, let's be a little careful here. I know there's a stereotype of lesbians as man-haters, and yet we know that's not the case. Lesbians are different from these sexual repressives. Most lesbians have an active sexuality, okay? They're not repressives, and they're not going around being as noxious as hell. These people reject all sexuality. It's very rare or uncommon for them to show any sexual interest, so naturally they're not going to be lesbians or straight. They're just like asexual to the point of antisexual, just to clear that up. And now we get to a couple of things. You don't see them as often, but many times you would actually see single mothers like that. Years ago, women were forced into marriages often by pressure, family pressure and all. And the marriage didn't last, and these repressives would end up with the kids. And so you hear about them telling the kids how horrible men are. We don't have as much of that today because women are less likely to be forced into a marriage just for society convention. Thanks to women's lib, there are career paths and stuff for them, and marriage is not expected. They call it women's lib. We used to call it women's lib. So now that we offended the women, let's talk about an even more noxious outworking of this, and it's in men. Men who reject the female sexuality are even more toxic. Maybe I'm saying that because I'm a guy and I've run into it. And I've run into it several times. But one time I had a chance to investigate it a little more closely. And I can't say too much because of confidentiality agreements. This was in a professional situation. But this guy came in and he would wear like the cotton flannel shirts, nerdy shirts, He would have the nondescript pants that were a little too high at the cuffs, plain shoes, a haircut that, I don't know, would have been fitting maybe in the German army in 1939, not in in a northeastern city in 1975 or 1977 or whenever, 1980. And in fact, this was in the 80s. Okay, let me get my timeline straight here. And he was he had kind of a negative vibe to him, kind of a stagnant feel and stuff. But he didn't interact with people much. He was more in the background kind of guy. He might be considered nerdy, out of it, whatever. But it was until I got a chance to talk to him one-on-one one day. And he was going on how he thought that all women were whores and stuff. And I mentioned to one gal who had been friendly to him. She was just a nice, friendly, generous person. She obviously had no interest in this guy. And I said, well, what about her? She goes, oh, she's just like the rest of them. So his mommy was the saint and all other women were whores. And his reaction was, when there's an interaction, male or female, sometimes a little bit of sexual energy comes up. It doesn't mean we're horny for the other person. It's just the nature of the beast. You know, that's part of our personality that we project. Well, he didn't like that part of himself and he rejected it. But rather than say, well, I have this feeling, he would say, well, she's doing it. She's a whore. She's projecting that at me. You know, and it's very noxious, very unpleasant. I had a friend who was a metaphysical teacher at the time, about this time. And in fact, right after I had gotten done dealing with this character. And I remember the incident because she had asked me if I could drop off a couple of books that she wanted to borrow from me. And whenever we met, she would schedule it at a time we could sit and have a cup of coffee and talk. She was a very wise person. I learned a lot from her. She was a very wise and astute individual. And I'd say she was in her 50s at the time. And anyway, I had to check over there. The cats are acting up. But otherwise, so we go up and we talk. And she says, you know, I got to get ready because I have appointments. People who came to her for spiritual counseling. And she says, and this guy really skeeves me, the next one. I says, what do you mean? She says, you know, I've never had one like him. He just, he makes my skin crawl. She said, tell you what, do me a favor. You go out and talk to him a minute. And call me back later and tell me what you think. So, so finished my coffee, went out, and I saw this guy. He had, again, the cotton plaid shirt, the high water pants, the goofy shoes, the goofy look on his face. He had a clumsy crew cut. Back then, in the mid-'80s, the only person with a crew cut was Annie from the Eurythmics, you know. And he definitely wasn't her. And he had that same vibe. And I talked to him, and it was kind of like, oh, gosh, kind of thing, like talking to an 11-year-old from the 1940s. And again, he was one of these repressive types, but he was able to see this woman because she was more like his mother, not like other women. He saw her as a mother type, not as he saw other women. So again, when it manifests in the male, it's particularly noxious. And all of these people, male or female, dressing, clothing styles out of time, clothing styles to diminish a hint of sexuality. They can often function rationally, but behind closed doors, it's like men, 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 or women, 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 or whores, whores, whores. And that in itself is really disgusting. You don't really want to hear that. I was pretty surprised, but you know, it's a spiritual thing actually, and again, it's suppression of that Bjork type power, that energy, that sexuality, which normally should flow. See, normally should be given some form of expression, if not through sexual activity. There are other ways, and of course, accepting oneself and one's being as man or woman, and not being revulsed by these feelings. And I thought about this last night because I wanted to prepare this talk. And my friend Kenny and I had to go out to this place called Keyport on Legion business. And Keyport is right on the bay there. It's what they call the Bayshore area of New Jersey, right on Raritan Bay. It's a popular summer place, and this time of year, being the summer, we have a lot of out-of-town tourists. In Monmouth County, we call the out-of-town tourists bennies. down in Ocean County. They call them shoobies. And there's a lot of young people there in Keyport already. It's getting a little avant-garde. So we're joking. I'm kidding about some of the little cute little girls out there. You know, they're in their 20s and they're pert little bouncing boobies and stuff. And you know, guys talk like this. And I'm paying attention though. I'm saying, you know, gee, what makes me say that? And it's that feeling. And we really don't pay attention. It comes naturally. Women do the same thing. It's a feeling that comes naturally. It doesn't bother us. But to the repressive, oh my God, what an awful thing. So understand that, you know. What's normal and natural, when it's tampered, can become toxic. And the backblast can be worse than that of a bazooka. You don't want to get caught in that. I fired everything from the little M72 all the way up to the recoilless rifle. You want to talk about backblast? And none of those backblasts hit as much as the backblast of denying these natural energies. So this may help explain to you some of the people you come across. And again, this isn't the Bjork Rune, but it's a sort of refutation, a repulsion, a suppression of one of the energies associated with Bjork. Understand, this is like, again, it's almost like noun. Instead of something, it's nothing. It's a lack of something. Consider it along those lines. Just some food for thought. This is Uncle Thor. Have a good one.